The crying always starts at 2:14 a.m. It's not a scream, not loud enough to wake the neighbors. It's just this soft, broken sobbing like a child trying very hard not to be heard. And it's coming from inside my walls. The first night, I convinced myself it was nothing. Old apartment buildings make noises, right? Pipes knock, the wood expands and contracts. Rats move around, but rats don't cry. This sound was too emotional, too human. I just lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling, counting my breaths while the sobbing continued. It was on and off, like whoever was crying kept running out of air. Finally, I worked up the courage to sit up in bed and listen closer. The crying stopped, instantly. It was as if it knew I was listening. The silence that followed was somehow even more terrifying. The second night, it happened again. Same time, 2:14 a.m. This time, I didn't hesitate. I got out of bed, my feet cold on the floorboards. The crying was coming from the wall, right behind my headboard. I pressed my ear against the cold, painted surface. Silence. The moment I leaned back, the crying resumed, but from the wall across the room. My blood ran cold. That's when the real fear set in. Sound doesn't move like that. It doesn't play games. I slowly backed away, my eyes darting from wall to wall. It felt like the room itself was watching me, toying with me. On the third night, I was ready. I wasn't going to let my mind play tricks on me. I recorded it. I put my phone right up against the wall where the sound was loudest, volume maxed out. The crying lasted for almost 4 minutes straight, a heartbreaking, muffled sound that chilled me to the bone. When I played the recording back in the morning, my hands were shaking. Nothing. No sobs, no background noise, just the faint hiss of static. My heart sank. There was a pause on the line, a silence long enough that I had to check if the call had dropped. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. "Sometimes," he said, "buildings remember things." I asked him what he meant by that. He just laughed, a nervous, hollow sound, and quickly changed the subject to the leaky faucet in the kitchen. But before he hung up, he added one more thing, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "If you hear knocking," he said, "don't answer it." That night, the crying sounded closer than ever. It wasn't muffled anymore. It was clear, as if the child was right there in the room with me. And then I heard words. "Please." A desperate, tiny voice whispered. A long pause. Then, "He's coming back." A cold dread washed over me. At that exact moment, I felt something warm drip onto my hand. I looked up. There were fresh water stains on the ceiling, but they weren't spreading out like normal leaks. They were forming shapes. Handprints. Small, child-sized handprints, pressing down from above. The next morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed a hammer from my toolbox and went to the spot on the wall where the crying had been the loudest. I broke the drywall, pulling away chunks of plaster and dust. I just needed to see what was inside. There was no insulation, no wiring, just an old wooden wall behind it, a wall covered in scratches. Deep, frantic grooves, like someone had been clawing at the wood. Some of the scratches were stained a dark, rusty brown. And I saw something that made my stomach turn. Embedded in the wood were tiny fingernails, broken and bloody. As I stared in horror, a whisper came from right behind me, a breath of cold air on my neck. "He hears you breathing." At 2:14 a.m. that night, a new sound joined the crying. Heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway outside my apartment. Not running, not sneaking, just a slow, deliberate walk. A man's voice hummed softly, a tuneless, unsettling melody. Then, a deep voice rumbled through my front door. "Daddy's home." Suddenly, every single wall in my apartment began to cry at once. The sound was unbearable, a chorus of despair coming from all around me. And then, from behind my bathroom wall, knocking started. 3 slow, deliberate taps. A child whispered, so close it felt like it was in my ear. He found someone new. I was gone before sunrise. I didn't pack. I just ran. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just needed to be anywhere else. Weeks later, curiosity got the better of me. I looked up the building online. A new tenant had already moved into my old apartment, and in the review section, new comments were appearing. Weird noises at night, one said. Another, sounds like a kid crying. But it was the last comment that chilled me to my core. It read, sometimes it sounds like the walls are begging. The crying still starts at 2:14 a.m. It's just not where I live anymore. Subscribe for more.